We'll call this White Love Planning Commission work session to order. Mr. Jeff, would you call the roll, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Raymond Albert.
Present.
Debbie Brewer.
Here.
Elizabeth Littleton.
Here.
Connie Reed.
Here.
Linda Hayes is absent.
All right. Everybody had a little time to look over the last meeting? Any questions on it? All right. Move right along to discuss the plan for service and R1 zoning for the real property purpose for the annexation. Get my tongue on time. By the owners, consider that property identified Dixon County tax map 082 parcel 036.04 located at 3027 Westcott Road, White Bluff, Tennessee. Mr. Joyce, got anyone that would like to speak for that?
Yes, sir. So the property is located on 3027 Westcott Road. It consists of 2.71 acres, and we're asking this council if they'd consider rezoning the property in White Bluff city limits. And in the future, we'd like to see if there's a possibility to rezone the property to R2 to be able to do 3 residential building lots. They'll all be almost an acre apiece. There is a R2 parcel that touches the back of the property, and up front next to the property there's some half-acre tracts that are continuous all the way out to 47, I think, if you're familiar with that area. So we don't feel like in the future we would be asking, and it would be considered spot zoning at all, since it touches R2 property anyway. And I'm pretty sure if you guys consider annexing it, it'll come in as R1. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's by ordinance. It has to come in as R1, and then after the process is complete, the property owner then or at any point in the future can ask for a rezoning at that point.
Okay. Would any of you guys like to see this sketch plat? Is there a need for y'all to look at this sketch plat at this time?
It's in the package. I
Okay.
want to see a larger copy.
Does anybody want to see this larger copy?
I just want to ask about the road frontage.
I think there's 259 feet of road frontage. So there'll be 2 houses up front and then a 50-foot dedicated easement to the rear, and there'll be 1+ acre tract in the rear.
I thought that was changed where there could be buildings behind the business. Changing that last year.
I think our question is land shade lots.
Yeah, I don't think we've limited by what. There was discussion, but I don't think an amendment actually was.
Okay, Ms. Amanda, do you have any comment to make on that one?
In terms of the actual use, no, I think Attorney Mills will go through just kind of a refresher at some point during one of our 3 that we've got on the agenda about the general process. But the proposed use is for residential. It's already been stated that the property by ordinance has to come in as R1, and then the applicant can seek an alternative zoning designation at that time. I did go back and verify on the traffic assessment if that was going to be triggered. On its face, it does not, because it's not more than 5 acres. Well, it does say it's not total parcels or including the selected parcels of land, but it does not total more than 5 acres. But it is up to the Planning Commission if you all decide that you want to require a traffic impact or a traffic assessment for this property. My recommendation, because of the intent of being single-family homes, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Single-family homes, as the stated intent, I'm not sure that that would rise to the level of a traffic assessment being necessary, but again, that is the sole discretion of the planning commission.
Anyone else have any comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just kind of piggyback on the back of that, you know, under our new traffic impact study guidelines, there's the traffic assessment and then the traffic impact study. The traffic impact study is the full document, right? The traffic assessment is sort of the diet version, if you will, of the traffic impact. And as Ms. Harrington pointed out, this annexation does not trigger a traffic assessment. It's under 5 acres, it's 2.7 and change. But it's at this body's discretion to require one, so I think that's something you'll need to think about when you vote on Tuesday. But keep in mind that you don't know what the eventual use of this is going to be. It's going to come in as R1, so you know it's going to be that under the town's brand new adopted density standards as of Tuesday night. It would be 1.5 units per acre. So if I do some math real quick, that's going to be 4 residential units at R1 is the maximum. Not sure if that's even possible, but that's the absolute maximum under R1. If the applicant were to come in for a rezoning, you would also have the option to require a traffic assessment at that time. It's annexation or rezoning, so know that if you decide not to require a traffic assessment on the annexation, you could, if they were to seek a rezoning, but just know that the maximum density for this parcel, again, given its shape, I don't know exactly what's possible, but maximum density is 4 units. Now, since it's R1, it'd be single-family homes, so that's the maximum, just for your knowledge. I don't imagine a traffic assessment's going to show very much on 4 homes, but I am not a traffic engineer. And briefly, since we have 3 of these, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just on the annexation process, this body is not looking at the annexation itself. This body looks at a plan of services and makes a recommendation on the plan of services up to the council. The council then has to, in 2 meetings, have a first and second resolution to annex the property and adopt a plan of services, but that plan of services starts with this body. And that's what I handed out before the meeting. That is the draft plan of services. There'll be a few changes for each parcel, but this is the draft plan of services for all 3 of these annexations. So bear that in mind. What you're looking at to vote on Tuesday is recommending or not up the plan of services, but we've asked that you recommended it. Make changes before you recommend, don't just deny it. And whether or not you want a traffic assessment before you vote on the plan of services. That's the vote on Tuesday night. We're not here about any rezoning or anything yet, and certainly believe what the applicant says, but you never know what can happen. As of the moment, per your town law, it's going to come in as R1. And if they apply for a rezoning, you'll see them back for an R2 or whatever else it may be. So that's my spiel on annexations, and I'll spare it for the other 2, but it applies for all 3 that you're seeing today.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So we adopted some new subdivision regulations that might allow what's shown on this plat in R1? Jeff?
It's a new zoning ordinance change to density.
Yeah, the zoning ordinance did, not
Yeah.
subdivision.
Oh, okay, the zoning ordinance, right?
Right.
Okay.
He's questioning if he would have to go to R2
Oh,
to get the 3 lots.
To get the 3 lots based upon what this gentleman was talking about. The maximum in R1 is 4 lots. If we can meet the setbacks in an R1 zone, based upon how they read, there wouldn't be any need for us to go to R2.
So you would be limited to whatever the building envelope reveals for the setbacks, right?
Correct.
So, and I think those got adjusted, so we need to look at those. The other thing that was in there is building lot width. I think it was 80 under the new standard, and I'm looking on here, one of the lot widths at the front is 73. So that would be under the lot width standards.
So
You may have to adjust this, or you may have to ask for a rezoning. You'll have to figure that out. Under the new numbers, we can get you a copy of that ordinance.
But I'm gonna come back in front of this council, with a preliminary plat eventually, after I go to, so my question is there any flexibility, or, I know y'all hate the word variance, is there any flexibility in the 50-foot,
Unless you could show by reason of some kind of extraordinary topographical issue.
which is not the case. I didn't know if there could be a reduction in the easement to allow us to meet the 80 foot at the building setback.
Why don't you and I sit down, after this meeting, and we can take a look?
Perfect.
Yeah, let's do that, and, maybe next week, let me get the final ordinance that was just passed last night, get you a copy of those, and let's sit down and see what we can,
So you want to do it after the meeting today,
Let's-
just briefly?
let's do it next week.
That's fine,
That's
perfect.
okay. Okay.
That sounds good, and that'll give me time to review.
Yes.
So,
I will add
And
that
we'll
any
get you a signed
variance
copy.
does not come to this body. It would be the Board of
to
Zoning.
the Board of Zoning and
So
Appeals.
keep that, and then.
So our whole intent is, 3 residential lots. Because you got A1 out there, you got R1, you got R2, and then, the zoning for the smaller tracts, there's several, looks like there's half-acre tracts on 47 and coming in Westcott. And we're not trying to, our intentions are not to ask for a higher density than these 3 residential lots, which will almost be an acre apiece, just because of those surrounding neighbors.
I'm certain that there's a way that we can look at the plat and take a look at things and see what, at least come up with several options for you to
Fantastic.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'll add, and you can have discussions with Ms. Harrington, the 50-foot wide requirement is a state law.
Okay.
So that's not something that we can typically grant a variance on. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind when you're having that discussion.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else have any more questions for him?
Thank y'all.
All right. Discuss obtaining services for R1 zoning for real property for annexation by the owner. Identified in Dixon County tax map of 096, parcel 016.06, located in Buckhorn Road, White Bluff. She wasn't here to speak for that.
Hi, my name is Daniel Terrell, property owner of the parcel in question. It's surrounded on 3 or 4 sides by R3 zoning. This square was left out way back when, for whatever reason. I heard the existing old property owner wanted it left out for whatever reason, and we just asked him to bring it into the city. Is there a history to that?
It's one of the donut holes, I guess.
Yes, it is.
I have a question. Now, this is my lack of, where is Buckhorn Road at?
Is it a recorded road?
It's a private drive, the original, Dollar General, right down here.
Yeah.
Right before you get to Dollar General, there's just a private drive that goes back towards what we refer to as the Bryant property.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I just wasn't familiar with that name.
Yep.
my only question. Anyone else, Mr. Mather?
Mr. Chair, the same discussions for the last one. This is a true donut hole. They're wanting to come into the town. We would like them to come into the town to resolve the hole there. It's less than 5 acres. No assessment is, that doesn't trigger the traffic assessment. But again, as was discussed with the last application, that is at the discretion of this body come Tuesday. Because of it's one parcel in the midst of residential, what is the intent for the ultimate development?
To go R3, similar to a round.
To go R3, to match the surrounding, zoning of the property. Of course, you've heard and we've talked before that it comes in as R1, you'll have to seek an R3, to match the surroundings. So, really, I don't have any additional comments.
Okay.
This is 0.34 acres, right?
I would not recommend a traffic assessment for this particular piece of property.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments to make on it?
Is this gonna empty out exclusively on Buckhorn Road?
It's something we're gonna have to, I guess, discuss, but there's a small portion that touches Bell Circle, but it's not enough to, meet a legal lot yet.
So we've been kicking around a couple of ideas, one of which would empty onto, or would have its primary access on Buckthorn because there's obviously quite a bit of frontage there. But this is part of, I believe, it's intended to be and considered part of that Bell Forge subdivision. So we've been looking at some options on how to incorporate that truly with that subdivision, but that's something that the applicant and I are still working through on the plat.
Every tract around this is already in the town, and it was platted, and then you have this, so it's a little bit odd.
It's a little odd.
Okay. Anyone else have any? You have any more questions?
No, sir.
All right, we think we'll consider that next week.
Thank you.
Okay. We're up to discussing the rezoning R1 parcel.
Mr. Chairman, you've got one more annexation to talk about, number 4.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No. It's a little repetitious today.
Yeah. And discuss the planning services for R1 for the real property proposed annexation. Map 095, parcel 072.0, located Highway 70 East in White Bluff. All right, the one here to speak for that. Yes, sir.
Look, Alex, we both up. The owner is Tony Underhill, and after he met with the city and started the annexation process, Alex and Brandon's bunch are maybe gonna buy that from him, so they're here also.
Okay.
And this one is maybe unique, because the size isn't necessarily unique, it's about 11 acres, it may be 11 acres. And a bunch of a good portion is already in the city. It's, I guess, more the rear of the lot, the parcel, is outside of the city. Okay.
Do you have any comments on that one?
Yep, the commentary is going to be the same, except that for the size of the parcel, because it is almost 11 acres, the traffic impact study, let's see here. Yeah, the traffic impact study will be needed. I'm sorry, hold on one second, I'm just double checking something here. Definitely, I'm sorry, the traffic assessment will, because there's involved parts of it, 5 acres or more. So we know that that will be required. I'm curious to hear from the owner or potential applicant, what the potential use for the property will be.
So, good morning, or good afternoon, everybody. So the intended use would be a PUD, right? I know that it seems that the town likes PUDs. That's where we're going, so that you guys have a little bit more control of what's going in there, and what's going to be the finished product. So that's what what we'll be proposing. As it pertains to the traffic study, I was under the impression that the traffic study would be when the PUD would come in, and the annexation. At application, we need to be notified if a traffic study is required and the annexation is submitted, but I don't think that has been done. So I would ask.
It says traffic assessment study, and Mr. Mills, if I'm reading this or interpreting it incorrectly, I appreciate the correction. A traffic assessment shall be required for all annexation or rezoning applications if A, such a request involves a parcel of land, or if multiple parcels are included, the collective parcels of land of 5 acres or more, or B, any annexation or rezoning application so determined by the Planning Commission or the Planning Director to require a traffic assessment study. The Planning Commission reserves the absolute discretion to request a traffic assessment to be submitted regardless of the minimum acreage due to the location of the site to be rezoned, potential foreseeable impact on existing public infrastructure, or other potential factors deemed appropriate to require the traffic assessment. A traffic assessment shall not substitute for a traffic impact study requirement, but its findings may contribute to the waiving of a traffic impact study if so determined by the Planning Commission. A traffic assessment is typically an analysis that includes the following sections: general site description, trip generation, roadway conditions and access potential, conclusions. And then it goes into a couple of different, little bit of an expansion of general site description, trip generation, roadway conditions, and access potential, and then conclusions. And then it goes on to talk about the component of the rezoning process. But again, the most important, I think the salient point here in the top is on the annexation portion. So even though there is a portion that may or may not already be, like, that just a portion is coming into the town, the overall acreage that is potential for development is over 10 acres, and/or is the discretion of this body to require the traffic assessment, not impact study. I'm talking about assessment.
Yeah, if I may, just a couple of quick questions. Is part of this already in the town?
Yeah,
Yes,
about 5 or 6 acres is in the town.
which means almost 5 acres is out, more or less.
I was just trying to, so,
Barely.
to Ms. Harrington's point, a traffic assessment is required for annexations that meet those minimum requirements. If it even doesn't, Planning Commission can require it. Planning Commission can also waive it, but it is a triggering event unless the Planning Commission acts. And the question is, because there's two things happening here. There's an annexation and a zoning. The zoning is going to be R1. And the annexation is not of the entire 11 acres. The annexation's of about 5 acres. So that, I'd have to look at that before Tuesday, but that may not trigger the traffic assessment, but the zoning would. So it's probably more of an academic point, because you're asking for the entire property to be zoned R1. But we can certainly look at that, but it is in here that's a traffic assessment, not a full traffic impact study. You're looking at, you're going to tell in a formal report about the site, the maximum use as zoned, but you're not gonna have the same type of.
We've already ordered a traffic study.
Sure.
Because if we go to a PUD, we'll
You're
need
gonna
that
have to do
anyway.
it.
That's why we're asking, we're saying,
But-
we're actually requesting, I know that the rules are, it comes in as an R1, right? We're already asking for a PUD. Our full
No.
intention.
No, it's coming in as an R1.
I understand. What I'm saying is, our intentions are, I know it's gonna come as R1, our intentions are for a PUD. And given that those are our intentions, we are already in the process of doing the traffic impact, not a traffic assessment, but a full detailed traffic impact study. Therefore, what I'm asking from the planning commission is that we can move forward, given that we have to, on the 23rd through the 26th, SEC will be giving us a traffic impact study. We can't do anything with this site if we don't have the density that we're going to be asking for. So I think we'll just be delaying a process yet another month if we.
I don't know that, I mean, I don't want to be argumentative, so don't take it that way. Because all of the factors that are in a TA are already going to be in a traffic impact. So, right, so I don't know how that would necessarily cause any delay, but let me finish, wait, let me finish my thought before I get too far. You don't want me off in the weeds, I'll never find my way back. But here's the other thing. I think because we've got our traffic impact guidelines and regulations, and we have our PUD, and we have really a new set of guidelines and ordinances that our town has recently adopted, that I think order of operations is going to be very important. And I don't know that it would be, this is my opinion as a town planner, that skipping steps is going to be very beneficial in terms of just keeping track of the project. We know that things can happen. That's not my absolute call. But I think that for the benefit of the project, for the benefit of the town, and just being sure that we keep everything in order and making sure that we hit all of the necessary steps and making sure that communication is crisp and clear, that steps are not skipped. That would be my recommendation to this body. But this is only a work session. This is why we have this forum.
I don't think we're skipping, because the way the guidelines for the traffic study guidelines are written, there's a requirement, there are two requirements for doing these, and the second, it's item 1 or item 2, and the or item 2 is if required by the planning commission, and it was supposed to be required 30 days in advance of the meeting. Now, we're Johnny-come-latelys. Tony Underhill owns the property, and he put in the annexation, and we're kind of coming in much later, looking at buying it.
Technically, we didn't get the legal description until much later than we were supposed to. So if we want to get technical, we can do that. But I don't think we need to.
So I'll just add real quick to the procedure. The only thing before this body is the annexation and the mandatory R1 zoning process. So that'll have to go through, we have 3 meetings on that. Planning Commission will act, and that will have to go up with a litany of notices, resolutions, and an ordinance to the town council for 2 readings. Now, I guess one of your questions might be, when's the earliest we can submit our PUD, right? It can't be considered by this body until after the town council has acted on that second reading of the ordinance and the second resolution. That doesn't mean you can't submit it, it just can't be considered by this body until town council has confirmed the annexation, if they confirm it, and then if it's annexed, it will be R1. So the PUD is going to be, as expected, a rezoning of the property to that PUD, which start at this body and work its way up. I would like to look at the traffic assessment requirements, and I can get y'all an answer soon, But my initial thought is, it's gonna be at the discretion of the planning commission. You're not annexing 10-plus acres. We're only annexing, I'll need to look at the math, but we're annexing less than 10 acres, it looks like. And so it's gonna be at the discretion of the planning commission. If they say they need a traffic assessment, they have the discretion to say, we're not going to act on this until we have the traffic assessment. But that'll be up to them, and I'll need to confirm that. But in terms of procedure, we need to get through annexation and that R1 zoning. And you can be working on the PUD, it's just this body's not going to be able to see it until the actual annexation and initial zoning has occurred. If that makes sense, it's sort of an order of operation. But it's not like, don't do anything until it's annexed. You can be working on that.
Right.
It's just knowing that if for whatever reason the council denies the annexation, that work would have been in vain. But, so waiting could, save that. But if you're anticipating the annexation being successful, there's nothing that prevents you from working in parallel on the PUD.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question, kind of related to what you just said? Do we need to annex?
We have no authority to plat or anything on any part that's outside the town limits.
So we would have to go through the county for that part outside of the limits?
If you want to stick with it, we would, ideally, for cleanliness, I would want to know exactly where the boundary is, and that probably needs to be broken up into 2 parcels. So then you'd have a parcel that's in the town limits and a parcel on the back that's in the county, and you could deal with 2 different bodies on each of those at your leisure. I will add that when you're dealing with multiple bodies, the infrastructure can get a little, especially the roads, can get a little wonky on who's permitting and controlling what, and sometimes one body can have a say in what happens to the other. So it's at your discretion, but that's how that would need to be. But at the moment, this body can only approve things that are within the town limits, even if it's in our urban growth boundary. The county controls until it's annexed.
Yeah. I mean, we fully, just for full transparency, what are we doing here? We're gonna add, we're looking at doing a planned unit development. We're looking at putting single-family homes on the site. One of the things that I think we have learned, like we did Eagles Nest or Maple Hills, now Carriageway, and one of the things that after the landscape ordinance that came in, our plan is to do a significant amount of, it'll be a loop around that site. So if you could just imagine a loop, and the house is on the inside and then on the outside. And we're putting a significant amount of streetscaping, so the idea is that we'll have a kind of a tree-lined road once these trees actually mature. Some lighting along the road, and then a fence up along Route 70, and then a 20-foot or 20 to 30 foot, I don't know what the buffer is, but keeping the old trees there just to kind of screen the neighborhood from 70 so you can't see it. I'm sure you'll see it in the fall, but when the foliage is there. And then I'm sure there's additional with landscaping requirements, and then it being kind of fenced. In the middle, there'll be, we're looking at some green space, etc., and a pavilion, in place that the families kind of can hang out. And there'll be additional trees up along that space. So there's going to be a lot of landscaping. That's the plan. We need to get the density in there to make it work. There is some topography to the left side, so we have to. We're going to have to. You guys have an ordinance for clearing that you just recently adopted. We understand that ordinance, so we have to clear some of the trees to move the dirt and flip-flop it and make it kind of straight and flat, and then we'll replant all those trees. But the plan is, the planned unit development, it'll have a double entrance into the site, not two separate, kind of like a in and then out. But I think it'll look pretty nice. What we'll be submitting to you guys is like a concept, just kind of get a feel to see what you guys think. So we're kind of taking into account now, what we do have to do is we have to take into account the thing we just recently adopted for the additional parking spots to make sure that our driveways are big enough for the additional parking for those homes. So we're going through that. But think it's gonna be a really nice development.
What about, I know it's way before it needs to be, but the turning lane issue off of 70. No.
No. So we have not planned on any turning lanes anywhere as of yet. We're gonna wait for the traffic study to come back to tell us if that traffic is gonna require a turning lane and or not. But right now, there is not any turning lanes that are planned. If there is a turning lane, it'll probably be on the turning lane on the side of the property. So that will be the turning lane. Because it is a highway, it's a state highway, the process that we have to go through to build a state highway is just completely different than it is, when I mean completely different, very similar construction, but in cost, just because of state highway requirements, it's just the cross-section, how much rock, et cetera, and who's allowed to work on it, what contractors are not allowed to work on it, and licensing requirements. But no, as of right now, there's no talk of that. But we are waiting for the traffic study to come in. It's planned to come in on the 23rd, and then we'll be submitting that.
And I'll add, Commissioner Brewer, that part of the reason I think this body and the council changed the zoning ordinance a couple of years ago to whenever something gets annexed to BR1, and again, never going to say the applicant's not being forthright as we did with the previous one. I'm sure they mean what they say, but we don't know what can happen, right? So when you get into discussions down the rabbit hole, I think it can cloud what we're looking at. So with it being required to be R1, that's the maximum density this body's looking at. And, so at 10.99 acres per the tax assessor's record, see if it's 11 or whatever, but it's 16 units. That's what you're looking at R1. And then whenever they come in for a rezoning or a PUD application, that's when you'll see a traffic assessment. You'll see that higher density, and questions about turning lanes and access will come up. That's not typically appropriate at the annexation phase, unless, like in the old days, they were coming in right now as an annexation and a high-density PUD, you'd have to have all those conversations. But this is bifurcated. We're just looking at annexation in R1, 16-unit maximum, if they could even get to that number, given the site. That's what you're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
My
Good question, but that'll be, you will see the PUD down the road if that ever comes in.
Well, the reason I asked that question, because dealing with the Act 70 in church, and that was why I had that question in my mind.
And that is a great question when the PUD comes in, and you see the traffic study, and, don't forget the question, but, yeah.
Okay, anyone else have any comments, questions, statements?
So I got a quick question. So just want to understand for this specific annexation, are we now pushing it to, are we pushing it another month? Is that until we get a study or?
Don't know yet.
We're waiting for you to.
We're going to keep it on Tuesday unless, it'll be on Tuesday regardless, but we're going to see if the TA is required, but also you can ask, even if it is required, for the planning commission to waive it. But if it's not required, it'll be at the planning commission's discretion, and you're not going to know how they vote until Tuesday.
Sure.
So they could send it up on Tuesday. They could say, look, we really want to see a traffic assessment. Go get one. We'll see you next month. We'll know on Tuesday.
Well, officially, just for the record, I'm not asking to waive the traffic assessment. We are already in the process of exceeding the ordinance requirements and doing a traffic impact study, and we will have that too. So what we're asking is contingent on
When is the next city council meeting? After September 10th, when is the next, or the first city council
First
meeting?
Tuesday in October.
Whatever.
I think it's October the 1st.
Okay. So, is it, and I guess we don't want to ask the crystal ball, but come next Tuesday, would you guys be amenable to us presenting the option of, or request maybe that we provide prior to city council the traffic study?
We can't make that promise because we're not voting.
Okay.
And is that traffic impact study based upon R1 or based
It's
upon your PUD?
It's going to be based on the higher density.
And that's why I'm asking everybody to bifurcate things, because that's not going to tell them anything about this annexation. It's coming in at R1, that's what the traffic assessment, required or not, would be on.
So do you want us to kind of dumb that down, asking them to reduce it completely, or?
Maybe, but we'll talk before the end of the week,
Okay.
we'll look at it, but again, this is, the traffic assessment on this, however situated, would be on 10.99 acres in R1, period. That traffic assessment.
Yes, sir.
Your traffic impact study is gonna be based on the plans in the PUD, and that's a whole different beast.
Right.
And the guidelines even say, these are separate items, they can't substitute for each other, so, for that reason. The TA can't substitute for the TIS, and the TIS can't substitute for the TA. They're separate. Now, the traffic assessment is designed to not be this huge laborious thing, it's a snapshot for the bodies to look at when they vote. So, but we can talk before the end of the week.
One last thing, if you have a survey of the property that delineates exactly what portion is being annexed in, bring that in. Please email it in advance if you can, because I don't have anything. I've got a legal study, a legal description that was emailed over, but no, at least I don't recall a survey being attached to that. So bring that, and that will instantly clear up the question whether or not a GA is required or not, because that'll tell us instantly if it's 5 acres or more.
Sure. And we'll ask SEC, maybe they can, I'm sure they already have everything they need for a TA, so we may be able to just get you guys that.
We're gonna have to have boundary survey anyway,
Right.
survey anyway. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else have any more comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. All right. Okay. Now we got the discussion of the rezoning R1 portion. Now, 096 parcel 100.24 Jazz Center. And David Powell on it. Anyone here to speak on any of that?
This is just a cleanup item. In years past, Old 70-2 was a functional road, and as I understand, that was used as the delineation between residential and, I think at one point that property was all industrial, and over time it has evolved over different zoning designations, and there is just a tiny sliver that has remained R1. And again, this is just a cleanup to make the entire parcel, or that portion, all commercial. That's all it is.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments, questions? All right. Yep, discussing the policy of approve new development road naming. Mr. Andrew.
Yes, sir. So, town council, on Tuesday night and at their previous work session, brought up some concern about how roads are named, and really, I'll break it into two parts. The second one we're not going to talk about today. The first one is when they come into the town, when we go through that dedication process, right? When it gets converted to a public asset. So that's what we're going to talk about. The other one is changing road names generally, and the council will think on that for future meetings. So what the council voted on was to send to this body whether or not this body would consider amending its subdivision regulations to require when an applicant submits its plans that involves new infrastructure, so new roads, that this planning commission must approve the name of that road as part of that. Right now, you don't. Perhaps you could have, but it's not been a requirement, but the council is asking this body to take over authority for naming the road. So if someone called the road in their plans, you know, a curse word or something odd like red, red, blue, like who's going to name a road that? This body could say, no, we're going to name it something a little bit more normal, I guess, whatever normal may be. So they've asked y'all to consider that. That, what I just explained by itself, would be full discretion at this body on what to name roads. I'm sure that's perfectly fine. What you may want to consider, if you are to take up the council's request, is whether or not you want to put parameters on that so developers know, rather than hoping when they come probably with the final plat. I've not talked to Jeff or Amanda on when you would need to weigh in, but probably by the final plat, because that's when lots can be sold. So people start owning it, thinking their address is something, changing it can be a little tumultuous. But assuming it's at or before the final plat, do y'all want to set parameters on what roads can be named so that when it comes in it's not an issue, or they just have to hope you like it, or you're going to have to vote in that meeting on a new name, which may be a little difficult. So that the council wanted y'all to consider that, and we can certainly make any one of those versions work. So I'll kind of, having said that, if Jeff or Amanda want to weigh in, but if y'all want to talk about it or ask us questions, we're happy to jump in. As a council member?
Yeah.
You know what you're
I
saying?
voted to send it to this body, but only to the extent that maybe we put a parameter in place that says, don't name them a curse word. I mean, somebody that spends millions of dollars to develop their land that we vote on and say, it's okay, in my opinion, has the right to name the roads within that development after their mom or after whatever they want, you know, as long as it's not something that is
Offensive.
yeah, offensive, like a curse word or Nazi drive or, you know, something. But that's as far as I'm willing to go.
The only thing I'll add, and so I did, like I said Tuesday night, I looked at a few other jurisdictions on how they deal with it, and a lot of them do have policies. So I could bring some drafts to you. But I will, to only play a little bit of devil's advocate to what you said, and I don't necessarily disagree. Some subdivisions can have private roads, right? You can do whatever you want on that. It's never going to be a public asset. But even though someone spent whatever they did, if it's going to become a public road, by law, the town's in control of it. You know, just like a town, we talked about Tuesday night, can change the road name. So I know it gets into policy, and I'll let y'all kind of decide that, but the town will be in control. And, you know, typically that developer is going to sell off and be gone, right? So I think I have certain concerns about it popping up at a final plat and whoever the PC is deciding what road names are. It seems a little, you know, moving target, right? If y'all set up parameters, that way you're just following your parameters, and that may be easier. So if this body were inclined, it won't be by Tuesday, but we can work on some simple, I'm not going to make this a 10-page parameter document, but a simple set of parameters on road names within the town that are new, right? It has nothing to do with existing public roads. It's just roads that are going to be dedicated over to the town, intended public roads. What are some parameters for that? And we can bring that if that's what this body wants to see. It will not be on the agenda Tuesday.
So we can say, I mean, we're not voting on anything, but we can just drop this off for Tuesday if that's what we want, is for you to look more into it.
Well, we would, either way.
We have to vote on that.
Well, we would put it in the subregs, something simple. Either way, if y'all want discretion at final plats or before, or you want parameters, it'll be in the subregs. We won't have that by Tuesday. You'll see it at the following workshop a work session, and then we have to publish it, so then you'd see it at the meeting after that. So I'm talking December would be the actual vote on this, however it comes up. And that's if it even ends up being in the summer.
Yeah, in my mind, and this is, y'all can put your 10 cents worth in, but, before I took any action on putting anything in the subdivision regulation, I wanna see what some of the other townships say, what their parameters are, because I think it's a total waste of our time.
Well, if that's something this body wants to see on Tuesday, we can certainly pull just other parameters from other cities in Tennessee, and y'all can just look at them. If you want more time, we can put it on next month. Y'all tell us what you want. You want it by Tuesday, or you want it for the next workshop? We would need to know from this body.
I'm inclined to give you all the time you need to get it. I don't want you this is Thursday already, and so,
It is.
I'm inclined to say push it. Not push to get it done, push it to the next meeting, because
Well, we can
you
get
need time to get what we're looking for.
I mean, if you look at Nashville or Memphis, like, their policies are extensive.
Yeah.
We're not looking to do that, but we can get a few ideas together, so y'all, again, it's kind of like looking into the void. What are the options, right? So we can get you some things that have happened.
Yeah, I think we need something to look at before we can even sit down and say, okay, I don't want it to be this or this or this or this, because to me that's just, okay, I don't want it named that because I don't like it.
Right.
Simple.
So we'll move to the October work session.
Okay.
Okay. You wanna have anything else? Mr. Jim?
Yes, sir.
All right, we will call this meeting of the work session